see if that's working. Yeah, I'm not a huge streaming pro, as you can all tell. I did get a different mic though last time. Sorry, I got one of those USB sound dongles last time. People said there was too much noise coming from my super cheap sound card. Maybe I'll upgrade sometime in the future, but it's not a huge priority for me, to be honest. Let's see. I'm just gonna turn that off. Sorry, there was some feedback there. I'm only gonna stream for a bit, maybe half an hour or so today. But the reason I'm streaming is we've gotten a lot of pull requests. So this is our GitHub, and if you see, if you'd like to take a look at, sorry, 2020 0101. Let's see if I got that right. So wait, let's remove this here too. And you see we have 20 men open, 44 closed, so a total of 65 pull requests open since the beginning of the year, just since the beginning of the year. It's crazy, and crazy in a good way. So yeah, a lot of code being submitted from all sides. We've got some pull requests, some bug fixes. We've got some new features. Some of those pull requests were also duplicates, like they were backporting from master to main 3.8, anything like that. But still, that's a lot. If you think about it, the year is only 14 days old, so it's a lot of commits per day. However, we as the GNU Radio sort of leadership community are working on, well, we're thinking about how can we make this more streamlined, make this a little bit easier. Let me just kill that filter again. Ah, come on. It's open. But we're not there yet, which means I'm very happy about every pull request that comes in, but it's also a little bit of work for us, and I'm trying to sort of reduce the workload for us. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about things that make it easier for us to merge pull requests when you submit them. And I'm going to go through a couple of these and sort of point out things that are done well or done poorly. If you submitted a pull request and I call you out as this is something you can improve, please understand that I'm very happy about your contribution. I'm just trying to sort of make this smoother. I'm not trying to criticize or attack people personally. Yeah. Eventually, we usually merge everything that's reasonable. But you can just save us so much time if you think about a couple of things which you might not know. So this is why I'm doing this stream today. All right. I have a quick checklist here. So when you submit a pull request, the first thing that you should do to help us sort of sort it in is actually help us with those labels. Now, when we look at pull requests, we will triage them. So we might also apply some labels, but if you just do that, it just gives us a really sort of easy to see overview of what's going on. I'm just gonna pick one at random that hasn't been labeled, this one here. So block tool is part of mod tool. Let's take a look at the labels that we have. And actually, I think there's a button that shows us all the labels somewhere. Where's our labels? I know there's a menu somewhere that shows us all the labels. There we are, labels, right there in front of me. So these are the labels that we have. And you can, I'll go through a couple of them, but you'll see they have like very different meanings. So analog, audio, blocks, and so on are all labels that apply to certain areas of the code. So this is gr-analog, this is gr-blocks, this is gr-channels, and so on and so on. That is really easy to do. Like you you usually know which area your code is in. So in this case, like mod tool is one of those. You just click on that, boom, we know what's going on. A couple of other labels are API change. So if you know that you're changing ABI or API, you can add that label. If not, we'll try and add that later. ARM 32-bit are more platform specific. That is really important because let's say you're fixing something that only affects ARM. Our continuous integration infrastructure, for example, does not run on ARM, which means that we might actually miss a change or something like that. The backport labels are also really interesting and important. So these only apply to bug fixes. So just to quickly recap, we have a couple of main branches. So these are our branches, and the most important ones are master, where all the development happens, and then main 3.7 and main 3.8. So we maintain 3.7 and 3.8 versions of Green Radio, but we don't do any feature development there. However, all bug fixes go on master first, unless they don't actually apply on master. So the typical workflow or life cycle for a bug fix is it gets submitted on master, it gets reviewed there, etc., 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 and then later we backport it or cherry pick it onto one of these branches, maybe both branches. And if you know that we should be doing that, just add the label. It's very easy. Bug is very, it means it's a bug. For a pull request, I also use this for bug fixes, although I think I should maybe add another label here. C++ generation is one of those areas again, as we have C++ generation in Python, but C++11 is the one where this means, you're changing, say, a boost : something to a std : something. This is interesting because often changes with this label don't actually change anything at all, except they reduce our dependency on boost, which is great. But we already can't backport it to 3.7, which by definition is not C++11. Cleanup and craft are one of those things where you say, okay, like this pull request is not actually modifying anything relevant, but we're just cleaning stuff up. So maybe there's like commented out code or files that aren't being used anymore, and so on and so on. Dependencies means you're talking about all dependencies, obviously. So this doesn't happen a lot. Just pull them up real quick. But you see, for example, upstream GRIO will change our dependencies, and if we have to change Swig and Python versions, that's also going to affect our dependencies. Don't merge, an interesting button. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then sort of these are the standard GitHub ones: duplicate, enhancement. Duplicate, will flag something as a dupe and then we'll close it usually. Enhancement is good for us because it's usually the opposite of a bug fix. So like say there's a pull request against master, it's enhancement. We don't usually need to backport that, good for us. And you don't have to, this is just a guideline. Whoever will triage the pull request will also look at the labels, but it just gives us a good idea what to what to expect. And most importantly, other people who are not sort of, they might be sort of drive-by reviewers, they might see a label where it's like filter, and they're like, oh, filter, I know about filter, I'm just going to take a look at this guy. So, yeah, start with the labels. That helps us a lot. You can see most of the pull requests don't have labels, and that's because usually someone of us comes in and adds them later. Now, quickly, what is this don't merge label? It's very rare that you submit a pull request and then you put on the don't merge label. Because if you are simply unsure if the pull request is fine or not, that's what the review is there for. More likely, what happens is that someone will review and then see, wait a minute, this is something we can't merge yet. Like, we need to finish a discussion. And I'll go into this pull request here in a minute and see why we added the label there. So you usually don't have to add that label. There is a rare circumstance, this one here. Remove Folk as a submodule. As you all know, that's something we want to do. I submitted it. I immediately said don't merge because someone might see this innocuous pull request. The diff is actually small. It's plus 19 minus 77 lines. Someone might say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Click merge, and then we're not ready yet. So that's a rare occurrence where I just added the don't merge label immediately myself. Okay. So that was about labels. Next thing you can do when you submit a pull request is check the formatting is fine. So let's see if I can find one that failed that. Maybe this one? No. Obviously not, because all checks have passed. Ah, there we go. So the original pull request actually did not have formatting in the correct state. I'm talking about the formatting of C++ files. So headers and implementation files, so .cc, and unfortunately our C++ headers are .h and not HPP or something like that. So if you do that, then GitHub will not put a check mark here and says, no, your formatting is bad. And if you go here, it'll also tell you which files failed. I think I can pull up the old checks somehow. There we go. That's the old one. So you look at the output, and it'll show you all the diffs, and then at the end, it'll say the following files had formatting issues, and lo and behold, these were exactly the files that were touched in this person's pull request. So I said, can you please fix that? Now this is something we only started doing recently, so no offense taken if formatting is bad. Now something about formatting. There's obviously taste, subjectivity. There's some subjectivity, like what is the correct formatting, and there's no such thing. What we did is we basically negotiated a Clang format file, and now that we have that file, we just ask everyone to stick to that file. Now, personally, I actually found this took like a lot of cognitive load off of me. Let me just drop this branch and open a random file. I don't know. I'm just gonna do random changes here. Vim, blah blah. What do we want to change? The UTEP sync, why not? Here, lines like these, for example. So let's say I'm writing like this guy, and I just start typing. So I'm just gonna retype these lines here. I'm gonna do n items to send is 0, and async event loop running is false. And I find that because of Clang format, I don't have to think about like when do I do line breaks, when do I do tabs and spaces and whatnot. I just type whatever I need doing. Like tap 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 tap, and then I just use a tool here, Clang format, to do the formatting. It didn't work, of course, because what I wrote was illegal syntax. But I'm just gonna break formatting and then hit my Clang format hotkey. In my case, that's Control K. But you can pick whatever. So I've seen people who have Clang format sort of auto enabled. So while they type, it reformats. I find that distracting. I have to push a button. Now you might say, well, what if I forget to push a button? Well, there's two checks. The first one is, let me just do that. My Git has a hook that says, no, wait. You're trying to commit code that is illegally formatted. And of course, the other one is what I just showed you is GitHub will also complain. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is, even if you don't like the formatting, please, it took us a while to agree on one, and it makes our life a lot easier. Like it makes diff smaller, just all-around improvement. Just use Clang format. And like I said, you can write all your code or do all your tests, and the last thing you do is you run Clang format against your branch. So we actually got an interesting comment on chat saying non-members can't set labels. Yes, I know. That is a GitHub thing, probably for a good reason. However, we have a team that you can be added to. So I hope I'm not showing anything confidential here, but I don't think so, since this is an open project. If you are in GRDevs, then you don't have any special permissions. You see, these people can be assigned bugs, issues for GNU Radio, but can't write to the repo itself. So anyone who's interested in GNU Radio development, just request being added to GRDevs. Please send us your GitHub username, and we will add you to that. This team exists for that sole reason of being able to set labels and do other things like that. Okay, let's go back to my list. Where was I? Okay, code formatting. Please format your code. Maybe we'll add linting and other things like Clang tidy or formatting checks for YAML files, formatting checks for Python files in the future. Maybe not, like that's all in the sky, but please do it for C++. And like I said, there's tools that do that for you. You don't even have to think about it. Now, let's say you do get a comment, and yeah, we have Andre Gelman. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Submitted this. Like I said, formatting was wrong. I said, can you please fix it? He says, oh yeah, sure, sorry, which was great. Like, excellent, like, look at that, 2 days, and then like the same day he's like already fixing it. Even apologized, totally not necessary. And then pushes another 4th commit, cosmetics. So now we have 5 commits, and he asks, is this the right way to do that? And it's a good question. So normally the answer is no. Please just update your commits immediately. So in this case, we might be, lenient, like since we're early in the thing. The problem though is this commit is entirely pointless by itself. It's like changes formatting. Like what's the value of this change? Now let's say I do want to backport this to a different branch. Let's see. I probably wouldn't backport this, but let's say I was going to backport that. I can't just backport this commit because let's say someone else comes and changes this file in the future. They assume the existence of this commit. So basically, there's changes in here that are also in here that are. So basically, we're changing the same file. We're touching the same lines twice, once here and once here, but we really only want to change them once. Let's see if I'm already there. That's what we call atomic commits. Something that we really appreciate people doing because it just helps us with backporting, and it also helps with keeping track of what's going on. If you read the git log in GNU Radio, you don't really want to have a commit in there that says, "Oh, I'm just doing random stuff that I forgot to do earlier." Why didn't you just do them earlier? So sometimes that just happens. We're all humans. You forget. If we forget to do stuff. For example, if you see this here, is exactly one of those commits. And the reason I had to do that is because we introduced a Clang format. We fixed the entire tree. It was all perfectly formatted. And then we started merging other pull requests that did not know about our formatting guidelines and all of that. So we just didn't pay attention ourselves. So that's when I added that GitHub action to check the formatting. So I had to go and fix all those files again, or every pull request after me adding the GitHub action would fail. But this pull request is a little bit annoying. It's sort of this commit is a little bit annoying. It's kind of like it breaks sort of the flow of like the changes that we're doing. It's like, oh, the costless loop got fixed. We know that's great. People understand that. And then here, GRC gets some fixes. And then in the middle, it's like, oh, like the janitor came in and cleaned up. It's like, whoa, like this is not adding information. And that's why we would really like to not do that in the future. Speaking of formatting, actually, I'll keep the log open. There are some rules we would like you to sort of follow when writing commit messages. And I actually have another commit for that, but I'm just going to sort of whoops, let me just reset that. So if I edit my commit message, I actually have a couple of checks built in. So if I start typing, it'll do a line break here and flag this red, and that's because I have a Vim setting for my Git commits that helps me format them properly. There's 2 rules that you really need to follow, and the one is don't make your lines longer than 72 characters, and the second one is keep the second line empty. So that's important formatting rule. Seems arbitrary, but it is actually really useful, and elsewhere it's like heavily enforced, where patches get sent around by email, because emails are limited to 80 characters, and then the 72 limit is usually used as a actually, is it limited to 80 characters? The point is, I think it's 72 because you want to be able to respond and then keep the response in the same line, like say for code reviews. By the way, those sounds you hear are a little monster I have here. Where was I? So that's sort of the basic rule. The other thing that you should make sure to think about is like what you put into your git commit message. So if we take a look, oops, that we don't want that. Just give me a sec here. Okay. So one thing you'll notice is that people prefix the subject line with the area that they are actually editing. And that's very important. When you should always treat the git commit message as an email to anyone who's reading the change set. So please do that. There's a couple of other things that are sort of convention, and I would ask people to do that as well, but we're not super gung-ho about that. That is like using what's the correct grammatical term, like the commanding syntax, like run, execute. So a mnemonic device that you can use to see if your subject line is good is you can prefix it with, when I apply this commit, it will ... and then set gr blocks path to the local blocks directory. It will run tests using gr add test macro. So let's see if I can find a less than ideal. So here, this one. When I apply this commit, it will more const. So now you have a grammatically incorrect sentence. So this is not great. I merged it, so it's not. You can see we're not always super crazy about it, and I can also see why Thomas would do that. Is he's adding all these consts here. Like eventually you just run out of stuff to say. A very, 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 like very rarely should you have a single line git commit message. Like almost always you want to have stuff here. And one of the reasons for that is like if you actually keep to 72 characters, you will not have a lot of space to talk about what you did, because you also need to prefix like the domain of the code with like here filter bandpass grc. It's like that's already a whole bunch of characters gone. You can't actually talk about all that much, but that's fine. Be brief and then explain in as much detail as you like what's going on in here. So here Ryan Volt's excellent commit messages. Like I would have personally left out the punctuation, but now we're going into really specific complaints. It's exactly right. Like it's like when I apply this commit, it will fix get tags in range for end minus start greater than delay, and then here's an explanation including examples like why this is good. Also, I'm going to pull up someone's pull request here. You have two places to put comments. That's the git commit message and the code. And you need to figure out which one you want to pick. So, wait a minute, where's my, there we are. 12% performance enhancement. So, so Ghost OP14, I'm just going to read out names as they appear in GitHub. I do know his real name. And he's a fantastic community member, spoken on conferences and done all sorts of great stuff. So I apologize, Ghost OP. Thank you, Nicholas. Imperative is the word. For the grammatical form you use in commit messages. So Ghost OP14. Sorry in advance. I'm gonna dissect your commit. You can see there's already a bunch of complaints by me. Really, there was like I'm actually kind of glad he submitted this because I don't have to open as many pull requests to find things, to point out things that are wrong. So the first commit message was 12% performance improvement in work. Like almost everything about that is wrong. Like I don't, like first of all, it doesn't, it doesn't follow the guideline of like when I apply this commit, it will blah 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 blah. But then I just don't know what's going on. Like 12% from what of what on which computer? Like which work function? Is this like the general work? Like is this like in the runtime? Like what's going on there? Like, and also by the way, like, don't put 12% something prefer in like in a subject line because like I believe that this is way faster. We can take a look at the code in a sec. But like on a different machine, it's not going to be 12%. It's going to be a lot significantly faster. So so first of all, like what actually changed? You can see filter, like one particular block got changed. So we could have said filter. Actually, I'm just gonna do this here to keep my, so I don't have my boundaries. Filter, improve performance of frequency or translating via filter. There we go. By the way, in case you didn't know, if you use -v on git commit, and you can set this as a default. I have this on other computers. It'll actually put the diff in the same text file. So there's this snip line here, which means this will be ignored by git, but it like helps you relate to what you actually did. It's like, what did I actually do in this commit? And now you have the entire diff, and now here in English you can describe the diff. Very useful, I think. And you can see, okay, filter something something. I did something and whatever. Okay. Now, so this would be a much better subject line for the pull request. And then here you can say you know, blob change this to that. Obviously that's not what you write. That's just, you know, you explain what you did. And then you also can do something like note on a, I don't know, you know, like i7 3.5 gigahertz machine running Ubuntu. This achieved a 12% performance increase, and so on. So, and this is good, like this is great, but if you put it in the subject line, then, you know, when reading the git log, especially when you do something like this, where you do log - one line, it just says like 12%, or like 12%, what's 12%? But if it says filter, colon, improve performance of blah, 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 very obvious. Okay. If we look at this diff, it's very small, very innocuous. By the way, this is a great change. I like this. There's a lot of things that are right about this. It's a small, easy to review change. So if you look at the original commit, though, it looked like this. So I could immediately tell, oh, the formatting's off, so someone didn't run Clang format, and GitHub also told me that. Also, the old code was still in there. So this is the old code, and here's the new code, and then here's an explanation. It's like, oh, by the way, I changed this because it was faster. Like, you don't do this in Git. Like, you just don't keep old code around. That's the whole point. And you got to think of Git, you can think of, you both have a current snapshot and you have a timeline of changes. And if you look at the current snapshot, like, who cares what the old code looked like? Let's say, you know, let's have your old code with a bug and the new code with a bug. Like, who cares about the old code with the bug? No one. You just want to have like the exact number of lines that you need to, when, you know, to give you the right compile output, really. So if you look at this comment here, it says eliminated stack push pop for decimation. And if you just read this comment out of context, you're like, what? Like, what does that even mean? Like, why? Like, where was there a decimation? I don't understand. And the reason is that this is a comment that should have been in the commit message and not in the code itself. And that's what I meant earlier. You have two places where you can put comments. And if you are commenting on the change, then you put it in the git commit message. If you put in a comment that is, you know, explaining, so actually this line should also go into the commit message. Because only because you have the old code, like you have the old code, and then you explain what you changed, and then you have the new code, all in the current snapshot. But that's what the git commit message is there for. Okay. By the way, another comment I had was like, this could be a const, so please make it a const. Like, consts are great. You know, all the Rust fans are going on about const, and honestly, they're right. Which other comments did I have? Yeah, remove the old code. That's right. This comment is better suited in the commit message. Please move it there, and so on. And then, of course, Ghost OP, great as he is, says, sure, I'll change it. He also had a comment, by the way, that changing plus equals to, so j plus equals is slower than j equals j plus. And I don't believe that. I'm gonna check it out in what's it called, in Godbolt later. But I'd be interested to see what people will say about it. Maybe there are cases where it is faster. It's just, and then, why not keep it that way? By the way, what he did was he took this individual rotate and made it a rotate n here. And this here uses a Volt kernel, and takes it out of the loop. We have way fewer operations. So yeah, I totally believe the 12% performance increase. This is a fantastic change because it's also, like I said, easy to review and easy to apply. Okay. Now he's changed that, and now we have two commits. The second one now passes the formatting check. The first one didn't. But like, I don't want to keep those commits. Like, first of all, they both have bad commit messages, so these should be squashed into a single one. And I can do that. I can do this here. I can go here, squash and merge, click this button, and then what? Then I commit this. Actually, oh yeah, no. He updated the title. So this is the title from the pull request, and then this here is sort of a summary of all the fixes. I'm not going to do that because first of all, it gets attributed to me and not to him, which is just wrong. But also, that doesn't improve. Well, actually, I can edit the commit message. However, editing commit messages in GitHub is dangerous because it does not tell you when you have exceeded your 72 characters. So please don't do that. What should he do? The correct thing to do is, like, when sort of the code reviews have passed, is to edit your own branch and then force push. When that happens, let's see, I think we have occasions of that. Let me see. I don't know if by heart, maybe. I don't know if someone has a pointer for me. Wait a minute. Igor something was very responsive recently. Igor, there we go. This is the one. No, this is not the one. No, he does. There we go. He force pushed the branch, and when you force push, or rather before you force push, you can edit the history on your branch to be whatever. So if you're not familiar with rebase, interactive rebases, git rebase-i, like, look it up. It's really useful. And the other thing you should look up are fix-up commits. So I'm just going to quickly show you how you can do that. So let's say I do test UHD foo. This is not a branch I'm going to commit. I'm gonna edit this file again. I'm gonna break formatting here, add a comment. This is badly formatted. And then I'm gonna commit this. I'm gonna skip this check, pretend like I didn't have that. I'm sorry, force and commit anyway. There we go. UHD, do, I don't know, add a comment to explain something. So, and now I push this up. I will, get dinged on in the reviews and in the CI. I change the file again. Fix it. There we go. Sorry about that. And now I do a git commit -- fix up onto my head commit. You can also pick any other commit, obviously. This is what my history looks like. You see this fix up commit up here, just in case you hadn't seen that before. And now when I do an interactive rebase onto my master branch, you can see I have a setting configured in Git that's called auto fix up. It'll just move this in here. A fix up here means it'll get squashed into the commit above without modifying the commit message. I save this, look at my history, that's what it looks like. I think this should be an empty commit now, yeah, because I undid my only change. Now, let's say I submitted the previous commit first, and then I wanna help the reviewers like move on. I just do a force push, and then that's the state of the commit that will be the branch that will be requested to be pulled. There we go. Hey, Marcus is online. Thanks. Okay, so where's my cheat? All right. The other thing is like, what do we put into commits? So very, very important, and that's sort of part of what I was just explaining. Like I said, we like atomic commits. I just had one open. This guy. Oh, it's the one I just closed. Sorry about that. You can see we have a lot of commits now. Add QA test, blah blah blah. They all need to go. Like this is a single change set. There's only one thing that gets added here. By the way, this is a great change. I hope we get it merged once everything's handled. There's no reason for 7 commits. I'm not going to go through the whole pull request here. It's a bunch of lines, but you can see just by the history, this is like update, update, update to what happened before. And if I were to merge this, then I would only put it into a single commit message. By the way, this is the original commit message, and this is excellent in many ways. I would have prepended the is this in blocks? Yeah, in blocks. So I would have said blocks colon and then exactly the same. Otherwise, fantastic. The rest though needs to go away. So then, what's his name? I don't know. Igor, AUD. We do a git, rebase-i, and then soak them all up, and then that's it. Why is this not being merged yet? By the way, we need a CLA. This is true for everyone who submits major changes. You need to submit some written paperwork about copyright assignment, etc. So this is what we're waiting on here. Unless he's already submitted that. I'm not entirely up to date. Okay. I'm getting a request to increase the console font, of course. Of course, guys. What about this? Marcus, like it? Okay, just say yes or no. Sorry, checklist. So, what do you put in? What do you put in? So, like I said, this is not good because like this contains stuff that should go into a single commit. Like, how do I decide that? These changes are all parts of the single change that should be in this commit. So, we sort of we talk of atomic commits. In this case here, he's sort of splitting the atom. Putting a single change set in multiple commits is one way to do that wrong. The other way to do that wrong is to put like 2 change sets into the same commit. Now I know the pull request queue pretty well, but I'm not quite sure if I have an example of that around. Yeah, that's difficult. I don't have an example, but let's say you change 2 different. Actually, wait a minute. I have an idea. Let's take a look at the log here. So, I was picking on Thomas earlier. Let's pick something he did well. Like he did exactly the opposite. So all these commits basically add consts where we did not have consts in the past. So they make our code more robust, more compiler checks and all that. And he could have like put all of the const changes into a single commit. This makes it a little bit easier for us to handle if we have to backport stuff or revert or whatever. So he has like one for geoblocks, one for constellation decoder, etc. So this is how you split up stuff. To be honest, it's not 100% scientific. In some cases, we just squash changes, just because squashing, at the very least, the good thing about squashing is it does not break bisectability. Um, it can make bisectability a little bit less useful. But like if in doubt or we're just running out of time, we will sometimes squash. Derek says his commit is an example of something suboptimal. There we are. One commit. Add API filter functions. Yeah, I think this is fine, Derek. I think this is fine. This is perfect. Or unless you meant a different commit. Like this adds like a set of APIs that are all sort of contiguous. Like they all like only make sense together. Oh, it has been squashed. Maybe I squashed it when I resubmitted your pull request, which sometimes happens. Okay. Yeah, like I said, atomic, just read it up on this. Like so many people have written blog posts on that. So that's the first thing. You submit a pull request, you do all these things, just makes our life a lot easier. Like, you've done things that we don't have to do, and that gets your code merged sooner. What else gets your code merged sooner? Now let's say you submit a pull request, and then you click new pull request, or you use like Hub or an API or whatever. And now you've clicked submit, and now it's there. You've added your labels. You've made sure that the formatting is fine. The CI is running, and let's say you still have half an hour, to spend on GNU Radio. One thing that would really help us if you just pick any of the other pull requests and start reviewing it, because the more eyes, the better. So say you pick someone like this here, and then you can say, well, I mean, you can just do all the things that I just said. You can say, well, yeah, this should be rebased. It would be nice. This doesn't have labels, which is not great. And let's say you like this change, and this is a good change too, by the way. In case you haven't reviewed yet on GitHub, you go here, click review changes, and now it's possible that this is also not available to people who are not part of the GIDES team. Same like with the labels. So Mr. Valichkov can maybe confirm or deny that. In any case, you can always comment. So if you can click this button, please do. And pick approve or request changes over comment. Like sometimes you just have a comment or a question, and then you can't do that. But like you see a change and you think it's bad, click request changes. Don't make it a comment, but you actually want to change request. Or you think it's good, click approve. And even you can even say like this commit is fine, except for that one line where there's like I would like you to change the comment. That's fine. You can say approve. This is great. Except for line 45 where the comment is unclear. Why would you do that? Like this seems counterintuitive. Like, are you approving or are you not approving? Well, I mean, we all have limited amounts of time. So if you as an outsider come and say, this is all great except for this one line, then I can say, okay, I trust you, and I'm going to make sure the original author changes the line according to your recommendations. And then you don't have to come back later and say, yeah, no, like, go. The alternative is you go request changes, say like, please change this one line, parentheses open, like everything else is great. And then you come back and click approve, like, thanks for changing that one line. Like, we're not exactly, we're not robots. Like, we understand that if you just write some English in here. I'm just going to kill that because there's no line for, like, line 45 is not even in the diff. So, yes. So, help us review. That's really useful. The other thing is quite obviously the continuous integration checks. Now this is good. You see like 5 check marks means it's all great. Well, maybe not. We don't know. Now the continuous integration is very powerful and it tests a lot, but it doesn't test everything. So if we go to our queue again, so for example, this here is not tested by our, and also this is a Python only change. Is that true? Yeah, it's a Python only change. So all of these check marks are meaningless. They don't mean anything. Like the formatting cannot be broken because like it doesn't touch C++, and the code that it modifies is not automatically tested. So all of these are also meaningless. So you could write a comment. So it's like, oh, like can you add a, automated test for this change set or something like that? That would be a valid thing to say. Oh, by the way, something I didn't mention earlier. If you cannot approve, you can always comment. You can say like, I think this is great. You can just basically put your pull request, your code review in a comment here. That should work for everyone. Please let me know if that's not the case. Yeah, like I said, that helps us a lot. So what do you watch out for when you're reviewing? I mean, you've all reviewed code, I assume. So, the obvious stuff. Sorry, this is not the button I meant to click. I'm just going to go back here. I'm just going to go through a couple and... Well, this is probably not a good idea. Okay, open this one again. Click here, like, okay, the change sets, okay, this comment should not have been changed, like stuff like that. You read the code, see, check for obvious problems. If you can run the code locally, that's great. So I'm going to give huge shout out to Ron, who says, yeah, look, I ran it locally, it worked fine. I found this bug, this warning would be great if you can fix it. So this is a fantastic, this is really useful. And, it just helps us tremendously. Okay, to sort of wrap this up, I'm just going to go through a couple of pull requests here and just point out a couple of things. I'm just going to close all my tabs and then sort of go again from the beginning. I'm not going to open all of them, but just to sort of tell you sort of what typical things are that will hold up your pull request. I'm just going to pick some from the second page as well. Okay, so this is good. See the commits nicely formatted. They could be a bit more verbose, like I'm not quite sure what's going on. Like there's all this stuff here, so Josh already wrote some text, like maybe this could have gone into a commit message. I don't know, I haven't reviewed this in depth yet. Checks pass. So like I said, for this one here, I would have to run it myself because the CI doesn't actually do anything. So I said checks pass, checks are meaningless in this case. But also it's a small change, which means small change is always easier to review. So if you have a change set you want us to have and you can split it up to 4 smaller pull requests, maybe we'll just get through 2 of them, but that means 50% of your code is already merged. So that helps us. This here is one of mine. This just remove stuff. I added the labels. Test pass. Like if you look at the actual diff, you can see like +1 minus 3,000 lines. Actually, this could be useful. Like, especially if you're not sort of in the core community team, you could like take a look at this and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm using this block. Like, don't remove it. So that's also something that you could do. Like I said here, the commit messages were not good. The change set are obviously great. Here I'm just gonna submit that. Here the checks do matter, and it's good that they passed. In the first round, they actually flagged the formatting is broken. Remove Folk as a submodule. Here, this is something that is not really, I'm just gonna skip this. This is something that should go through a grep first, but I also wanted to put up some code for people to read. This is an interesting one. Why? Because it sneaks in a dependency. Well, not really. So this is a bit of a corner case. You can see it's a one-line change. We do from, instead of here, we import FU, we now import it from SciPy. Except SciPy is not really truly a dependency, except we do use it in some cases. So even though it's a one-line change, I'm not quite sure what to do about that. Maybe Marcus has some comments. The good thing is that this is an example, so the impact is pretty low. So quite honestly, I wouldn't feel bad about merging it, except I would have to change the commit message. Because like this doesn't actually tell us enough about the change. Like you want to know that it's an example in digital, for example, then that's good to know. Yeah. By the way, thanks. Yeah. Vasil, I know you're on the stream. Thanks for your comments here. They're pretty useful. This is like I said. Look at that. Forgot the labels. 0MQ. I'm not quite sure if I need both of them, but it's definitely a new feature or an enhancement at least. And which means we're not going to backport it. Andrea has a CLA with us, so that's fine. Just really need to take another look at it. This here, as a matter of fact, what's that? So this is good. Explanation. Diff is not too big. This is sort of a, and the author actually writes, I'd like to see Marcus take a look at this because I don't want to write more code that will just get rejected. So this is a very good, workflow. Like, yeah, thanks for that. I'm just going to add some labels while I'm at it. And enhancement, so we're probably not going to backport that. Quite honestly, like the audio sinks and sources are not our, they usually don't hold us up a lot. Let's see. So this here is problematic for various reasons. Can we change the Folk minimum version on 3.8 is something we're currently discussing, and I don't want to sort of drag the discussion onto this call, but that's why the don't merge label is here. The PI itself is, 1 character, so that's not the problem. By the way, this is really good. Clayton references the issue that automatically gets fixed, and also that he replaced a different pull request. So this is very good. I love this when it's like easy for us to navigate. Same here. By the way, should you put this in your commit message? Personally, I think no, because the Git logs are sort of separate from GitHub. But I don't think we'll turn down code because of it. This is an enhancement, so you could even say it's a new feature. These are all sort of somewhat floating categories in some cases. Like typical sort of code reviews, like, oh look, we have boost shared putter, blah blah blah, but UHD uses stood shared putter in UHD 4 and above, so we need to come up with something. And then this is one of those cases where just work needs to be done, and then eventually it'll get approved. Right now it doesn't have any approval, and so on. This is something that was submitted a long time ago, and we kind of let it sit, and then I had to manually rebase it. I just squashed everything, and so this is why I am the submitter, but I did not write any code here. I don't want to take any credit for it. So this is a big change. It also adds a dependency. It's a new feature. It's a pretty cool one, actually. Currently 1 rejection. So we need to see what we do about that, because the original author, I don't think submitted it like a year ago. I'm not quite sure he's available to change it. This is one of those things where we have a lot of discussion, and it's doesn't seem to resolve. Yeah, I think the authors and reviewers will have to sort of take another look at that. But just to sort of give you an idea where personally I stumble a lot is CMake related stuff, because they're so difficult to test. Someone says, oh look, I fixed CMake on Arch Linux using Boost 185 alpha 0 experimental. I'm like, do I even want to review that? How do I know it doesn't break Mac OS whatever version something? This is very difficult. So if this is something where people could really sort of put in their their knowledge and say, oh, I'm running this on OpenBSD, please do it like this or not like that, because it helps us a lot. I can only test on so many systems, and honestly, it's mostly automated testing. This is the same, by the way. Also good. Where do you submit? Usually you submit everything on master, but then what about bug fixes that you also want to have on 3.8? You can do different things. So you can just add the backport label. I'm sure I have it somewhere. Okay, we don't. But none of these are bug fixes. So okay, but so you can just tag it, but you can also submit the pull request twice or 3 times against all the various branches. And if you do that, that's actually very useful. There's sort of a bit of a, I would recommend, if you want to do that, saves us a lot of time. Fantastic. I would recommend submitting it first on master, then see what the code reviews turn out to be, and then submit the other ones. And in some cases, if we have some extra time, then we'll just do it ourselves. But like, it helps us if you don't rely on that. Plus, I'd also like to do other things than backport stuff onto various branches. This here is currently conflicting, so we can't merge it anyway. So the author would have to take another look at it. The commit messages look fine. However, there's this whip thingy in the title. It's a bit like don't merge. Like, I'm not going to merge anything that is whip, but like, how do I know if it's no longer whip? So the the like, we would have to do something about this, like figure out if this is like no longer whip or whatever. But Piotr is pretty verbose here and explains exactly what his motivation is for submitting this. I'll probably have to close this and ask him to resubmit if we want to change that. Okay, that's all. Any more questions? Anyone have any? Yeah. While I'm talking to my microphone, anything? Any ideas for stuff that I could respond to? Nope. Looks like. Oh yeah, Nicola has a question. It's kind of weird responding to chat like this. Nicholas, what is your question? What if you submit a legit change that breaks something else? Well, usually if you break something, then it's not a legit change. But yeah, I don't know. Can you give an example? Should that be 2 commits or only 1? Okay, so I'm gonna make up an example. You tell me if I'm on the right track. Let's say you found a bug, and you have one commit that changes the QA that it now fails, where in the past it did not flag the bug. And then you have a second commit that fixes the bug. So you could, okay, so yeah, excuse me. In that specific case, I would just say excuse me, squash the commits. Like, why not? It's kind of the same change set. You could also have the unit test after the fix, but that's obviously something you would do by reordering history after you're finished. The reason you would do it after the fix is if you run a bisect, an automatic bisect, let's say you have the failing unit test first and then the fix later, and you do an automatic bisect, then that commit with the failing unit test will always fail, even though it, like, we know exactly how to fix it. So, but in that specific case, I would say, just squash them. Like I said, if you're like not sure, so you want to have atomic commits. You don't want to oversquash, you don't want to oversplit. But if you have to pick one of them, like always oversquash rather than oversplitting, just don't go crazy, because it's much harder to unsplit a commit than it is to squash commits. But if you're just not quite sure, then you just put it in one commit, and we'll probably merge it like that. Okay. Well, I hope this is useful. Please keep the commits coming at that high rate, but please make our life easier and also help others by and yourself really by reviewing other people's code. I gave a couple of pointers here, and if I do this again, maybe I won't and am so much and have a baby crying in the background. But yeah, if you have feedback on the kind of like streaming and video recording, I'd be interested to hear that too. By the way, I know my setup is pretty bare. Like, I don't watch that much Twitch, but I saw like a couple of streams when I logged in to start the stream, and it's interesting how elaborate some people are when they're talking about their workout routine or whatever it is. Even the gamers have like some really fancy setups, which I clearly don't. But I'm not quite sure if people even care about that. I focus on a minimalistic setup here by design, but like I said, if people prefer something else, I'd like to hear about it. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop the stream now.